Calling Ortiz Gigantor throughout the whole film just seems really fucking mean.
Well, I don't know if you were aware of this, but this was like in the research, but he's really fucking huge.
I
Finally,
watched.
I finally,
Watched.
I
finally,
watched. I
finally,
watched.
I finally,
Watched.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched Speed.
Why'd you say it like that?
I got a need for speed.
This is a different movie. So this is like a movie I forgot how much I loved.
I expected, like, I had high expectations for this film, but not this high. This film, like, blew me away. I was just, and the thing about this film is the fact that it could just keep you on the edge of your seat from the get-go to like the last minute of the movie is amazing to me.
It's paced so well. There's like a couple over the top moments, but otherwise you're just like it's just so well done for such like a stupid. It's Die Hard on a bus is like how this movie is
Right.
obviously like was sold.
Right.
In fact, to the point where McTiernan was asked to direct this, and he was like, I can't do that. And he got the person who directed this was his cinematographer on um, on
Die
Die
Hard.
Hard,
Yeah.
Jan de Bont. And so
Yeah. Jan de Bont. What a name. What a name. Um yeah, I mean, I from what I've read, not a lot of people had faith in this movie. Like there's this moment that I read that happened when Sandra Bullock was on a Rob Schneider film. Trying to do you, off the top of your head, do you know what movie Rob
I thought it
Schneider
was
and
like Demolition Man or something like
oh,
that.
it was Demolition Man. It was Demolition Man. And she was trying to explain to him like the plot of her new film. I think she just either got the part and was she was gonna go and shoot it after Demolition Man. And he was like, well, that sounds like a total flop. And then there's like a lot of stories like that where like Keanu Reeves is talking to someone, even like Jeff Daniels, I read while on the production while shooting Speed, was like, I have no faith in this movie doing well.
Yeah, and then I guess he saw a final cut and was like, um, yeah, I guess I think this will do okay.
I who do you know what production company actually went through with this? Was it Universal or Paramount? I think it
I
was
thought it was like
Paramount.
I thought it was like Fox, but I can't remember.
Maybe it was Fox. I think they went to Warner Brothers to pitch this first, and Warner Brothers was like, nah. And then either Fox or Paramount, whoever ended up having it, was like, yeah, we'll do it, but as long as certain like guidelines. And they wanted like weird people for this movie. Like instead of Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock, they wanted like Jeff Bridges and uh Ellen DeGeneres. Although I think the Ellen DeGeneres rumor was like that ended up not being true. Um they wanted Robert De Niro in Dennis Hopper's role, and I just don't see it. Like I was like, nah.
Who'd you say again?
It was going to be Jeff Bridges
Oh, right. Yeah, yeah.
as Jack, and then it was going to be Robert De Niro as the villain in Dennis Hopper's role. And then Jan de Bont wanted Dennis Hopper because he was like, no one would expect the villain to look like Dennis Hopper, and I want the villain to like look like the most regular guy. I guess there you go.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot of like different people that could have been cast in this, which I thought was interesting. Um I read something too that you probably read as well, that like the producers of this kind of figured out this was going to be a good movie when they were doing test screenings, and like at one point they would see people as they're leaving to go to the bathroom like walking backwards so they could keep watching the movie.
I would
uh,
piss my pants.
it's an hour and 50 minutes, and actually apparently they didn't even have the ending filmed yet. And so they they like they got more money based on the test screenings, right? So this movie is just like you also have like I think a lot of bigger name actresses kind of passed on this, and this became like a big break for Sandra Bullock,
Right.
like Kim Basinger, Alyssa Milano, Meryl Streep.
I could see out of all those three names that you mentioned, the one closest that I feel like could have brought like the cuteness and yet like the um seriousness to the role would have been Alyssa Milano.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think she would have worked. Also, Holly Berry, but she was quoted as saying that like I don't, I don't think that it would have done the same thing for me as it did for
So, oh yeah, Sandra, like she was like Sandra Bullock really just made it her own thing. Yeah, that's right.
right. But I disagree with that. I think that Holly Berry like kind of would have been great in this, and
I think so. I could see it. I could see it. Like a like a James Bond era Halle Berry.
yeah, I just don't really get like I get her point, but I also think that she would have kind of been like perfect in the role. Like I think like her kind of style I think would have hit well in the like kind of funny, but also like the flirtatious thing that was going on. I think it would have worked. Now the you didn't really have like as many interracial like relationships shown like in movies as you do now back then, and like studios were more worried about the blowback than now. They just tell people to go fuck themselves. But like I think that may have been a consideration like mid 90s, early 90s.
In saying all of this, I think we should uh kind of clarify to our audience that in setting all this up, the whole movie was about a $35 million budget, and it made 10 times that amount. The world wide box office ended up being around $350 million. And I think that's considered a win, wouldn't you say, wouldn't you say, David? um and
Absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely.
and so yeah, so all those people who had doubts that the movie would do well, all the studios that passed it up, all the actors who made fun of it, and all the actors who also passed it up, I think they're just regretting that quite a bit now.
Well, and we usually do all this at the end, but I think we can just finish it off now. So Michael Bay wanted to direct this, and at the time, this would have been his like first direct. This would have been his directorial debut. Um, and then Quentin Tarantino actually passed on this, and he said afterwards that this is like one of his favorite movies from the '90s. So, um, there's a lot of that stuff going on. Also, like a little bit of a smaller part, but the guy that plays Captain McMahon. Um, have you seen Terminator 2, obviously, right?
Yeah, he's the guy that was gonna build the machines, and then Sarah Connor wanted to kill him, but then they had to save him, but then he died anyways. Yeah, I seen the movie.
So anyway, he got that part because James Cameron recommended it for him off of that. And like originally, I think Craig T. Nelson was going to get that part, but he couldn't get out of the show Coach. So, um, I think we should just jump into this. What did you think of the opening title sequence on the elevator?
I was dying, dude. I was like, I forget how long title sequences at the beginning of movies used to be, because they're nothing now. There's not even a title sequence in a movie. I mean, I just I am gonna drop the fact that I just came back from Barbenheimer yesterday, and you don't really realize how uh just useless and foreboding a beginning title sequence is until you are like used to the modern era of movies to not have them, and then you have to go back to the 90s and watch a movie, and then it just has the longest one. Speed, I'll tell you what though, Speed does not start out very fast for that title sequence at all.
Oh, and one thing I wanted to point out when we were talking earlier is like what a big break this was for Sandra Bullock, and she then almost completely fucked it up by signing on to do Speed 2 when Keanu didn't.
Right,
Like
right.
that movie was like it was it was like it looked so bad that I don't even think I consider. I mean, I was only 9 when or no, I was like 7 when Speed came out and then a few years older when Speed 2 came out. And I just like I don't even think people considered going to see it. One, because Keanu was not in it, and two, because it was like it's Speed but on a boat. It's just like the idea I think was just kind of this movie already kind of seemed farcical in certain spots, but it was like just plausible enough, I think, to work for people that to do that with the sequel. Um, I watching this movie for the first time today, like I'm gonna watch the entire thing. I realized how much I had seen this movie on TV, and like my memory of it starts when they like all run into the building and they're like Keanu kind of volunteers him and Jeff Daniels to go check out the bomb. And so like the parts before that where like the people are walking from their business meeting and the one guy like makes fun of the other guy for pressing the button, and then fucking Dennis Hopper stabs a dude in the face. All that, like I was like, this is like the first time I've ever seen this. Like I don't remember any of this part.
Well, okay, so Dennis Hopper stabbing that guy in the face. Maybe the reason you don't remember that part is because that's the only scene. Whenever this gets broadcast on television, that's the only scene that's actually cut from the movie.
It's pretty like grotesque.
I mean, he stabs the dude in the ear, like through his head. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing too that I found hilarious is that they basically foreshadow the bus jump with Keanu jumping in the car on the way to like, you know, like
Oh, speaking of foreshadowing, they foreshadow them getting the passengers off the bus in like the right time as they're getting the passengers off of the elevator in the beginning. That's a huge like those two scenes mimic each other as far as like suspense goes perfectly.
absolutely, yeah, no. I the elevator part of it to me, I when you think of this movie, I was like, oh, they're on that bus for like an hour and a half, right?
Right. Right.
And looking at, I timed it out a little bit now because it was like I was watching this movie and I was like, we're 25 minutes in and we just got these fucking people like off this elevator and like see Dennis Hopper in the bottom. Also, not to be mean, because Dennis Hopper is also like passed 13 years ago, which is crazy because I didn't realize it had been that long. But when he like he almost reminds me of the Penguin when he's waddling away after Jeff Daniels gets shot at the bottom of the elevator. He's like like walking into the other room just to like have it explode. Um, but yeah, so the elevator is the first 25 minutes of this movie is that scene. And my big like remembrance from that is the one lady who wouldn't get off the elevator, and as like a 9-year-old was like, fuck that lady, man, like she's gonna get someone killed.
But then that's foreshadowing about the guy who wouldn't guy from Ferris Bueller wouldn't get off of the bus, and then that went wrong as you know, and the lady getting off the elevator that went off without a hitch. I know that actor. He's see
Alan Ruck.
Alan Ruck will always either be Cameron from Ferris Bueller or Connor from Succession to me. Like I don't even know his name. But now I
You do.
do.
It's
I do
Alan
know.
Ruck.
Yeah, I
So
know.
I always remembered him. He was on the show Spin City with Michael J. Fox, which was like a
Mm.
hilarious show from the guy that did Scrubs and who's now, you know, does Ted Lasso, Bill Lawrence. And so like that's like the first thing I ever saw him in, and then ever after I was like, it's fucking Spin City guy. And everyone else is like, you mean fucking Cameron from Ferris Bueller? And I was like,
Ferris
well,
Bueller, yeah.
didn't see that until the pandemic, so I was a little different than everyone else on that. Um, the other thing that is like interesting about this movie is that the way it kind of structures showing you that Hopper is in like a different elevator,
Yeah.
I think is cool. And then you get to see like the police working, and it's kind of satisfying it's satisfying in a totally 90s way where they're like, oh no, he'd want to be around here, and we're like, yes, he is around here, like go get him.
Okay, so a couple of things about that is one, I read somewhere that Jeff Daniels and Keanu Reeves' relationship in the movie, their characters, confused a lot of people because people were like, "So does SWAT hire out people from the bomb squad, and does Jeff Daniels and Keanu Reeves characters, are they partners like when they're not doing this? Like, are they police partners somewhere else? Or are they like so familiarized with themselves on this SWAT team? They're just like buddies, right? And it has to do, there's a lot of different factors to it. But apparently, no, SWAT doesn't third party their men in. It's just the SWAT unit takes care of like a whole bunch of things, including like hostage situations and bomb threats, stuff like that. And they're just on the SWAT team as a thing. But I could see the confusion because their relationship is almost like little brother, big brother, the entire time. And so, spoiler alert, when Jeff Daniels dies and you have it affecting Keanu Reeves, what I really like about his performance is it doesn't just affect, you don't see that affecting him um when he just pitches his fit, like his tantrum when it first happens. But for the rest of the movie, he holds that with him. And I really like that about the movie.
When I saw Jeff Daniels in this, the only thing I knew Jeff Daniels from at the time was Dumb and Dumber, which I guess came out the same year. And seeing Jeff Daniels in Dumb and Dumber, it took until, I think I talked about this before, it took till 2011
Is
in the Lookout for me to realize that he was a good actor and
Oh, it
not
was
just
The
like a comedic
Lookout?
guy.
For me, it was The Squid and the Whale.
I think I saw The Lookout first, but I can't remember. But yeah, no, he's like a phenomenal actor who, like, if you saw Dumb and Dumber first, you're like, oh, it's just this fucking
Well,
slapstick guy.
so is Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey in like the minor serious roles. Hold on, let me rephrase that. His serious roles have not been minor. The few serious roles that he has been in, he does amazing in. It's just that Jim Carrey prefers to do more comedic roles, you know. But yeah, I agree with you.
Well, I mean, if you're so talented at something, right? Like, just because you're really good at piano, if you're like one of the best guitar players ever, you probably just fucking play the guitar.
Right,
You
exactly.
just stick with that. There's a couple great lines in the beginning of this, and it's like, so we didn't even talk about like how they hook up the elevator to a crane, and then the crane like kind of rips off, but then it gets stuck, and so then like now they're, Hopper has heard some things, and so he starts blowing, and like the elevator falls. And there's this one dude with like maybe 4 or 5 lines in the beginning, but the only one I remember is like, usually the elevator falls down by now. And
Yeah,
also,
it was this, I know who you're talking about. It was this guy, and when they first get on the elevator, like the other guy hits the button and he, he goes, hey, I already hit it before, but I'm glad you're making sure it works.
no, so that guy was an asshole, but I'm talking about there was a cop that's like, usually it falls down by now.
Oh, the cop. Yeah, okay.
And then also, but they're just standing right outside the elevator, and I just imagine the impact from that falling, because it was on the 30th floor when it hits the free fall.
Yeah.
That impact would have, like, they couldn't be that fucking close to it.
Like blown off the doors of the elevator. Yeah, someone would have definitely gotten hurt. I like the story and how it ties into the ending of this whole sequence when Keanu Reeves and Jeff Daniels are talking about, you got a guy going to an airplane with a hostage. What do? And you shoot the hostage. And it's like, you shoot the hostage, like, that's ridiculous. That's stupid. And then he's like, well, what if we take, and it gives him the idea to take the hostages out of the situation. And so that's, the cause of them hooking up the elevator. Cause it's like, at that point, it doesn't matter if it blows because the crane and the hook would catch the elevator. And I love how that ties into the end of the sequence where he has to end up shooting Jeff Daniels anyways.
I think this was the first time watching this where I realized the like, what do you do, hot shot was like
Yeah.
from Jeff Daniels saying it in the beginning, and that like Hopper stole that from them saying it, which is like, how did he actually hear them say that?
He had mics.
Okay, but like, okay, I guess this makes sense to me because like the way he's acting in the elevator, it's like he's like, is something going on there? Are they trying to do something? What are they doing? You know what I mean? Like acting kind of weird, and then he blows it when they start moving on it. So I was like, oh, he heard them try and do something, so that's why. But in reality, he's hearing them, but
Yes.
he's like, oh, because Keanu says to Jeff Daniels like, oh, we should go in, and Jeff Daniels like, no, we were told to just hold tight. And so as long as they're holding tight, Hopper's not going to blow it. But
I
then
love
this,
the I love the 3-minute jump though, where he blows it 3 minutes early, and Keanu Reeves is like, "How much time did we have?" And Jeff Daniels was like, "Son of a bitch, blew early." And then they're figuring out why he did that. I thought that was really cool.
well, and also too, so you have the line about like 30 years, you wanted to stay in this job 30 years and get like your pension and a gold watch. And then like later on, they show they show Hopper's hands after you see him alive doing something.
Yeah,
Like you think he possibly could have died, but the movie then tells you like right away, no, he didn't die. But when they show him again for the first time after the explosion, it starts with his hands and a gold watch, really shiny gold watch, and then pans up to him. And I think that's actually like fairly subtle. I mean, like I think people could have easily picked up on it, but it's like I think you could have missed it too. And then like the way it connects in the end, like with the oh,
the
he's like
bomb and
he has he has the watch on the bomb, and when they first say that, I was like, well, how is that gonna mean anything to him? But the reason it Jeff Daniels focuses on it is because he's like, bomb makers pick one bomb that they're comfortable with, and that's all they do. This guy keeps switching, so that's a thing. And then he thinks about the watch, and that's how he like comes to the
right.
oh, it's this guy has to be like police related.
Another thing before we move on from the elevator scene, because I think it's it's about time we do that, is that my wife is watching this with me, and she hates gore, as you know. She just hates anything bloody and gory, and she's she's watching the people getting out of the elevator, and she's like, "I are we about to see someone being chopped in half right now?" And as much as that was a possibility, because we didn't know anything about this movie, and I told her, I was like, this isn't even what the fucking movie is about. She's like, oh my god. She's like, what is gonna happen? We kept thinking like something tragic happens in this moment that's gonna like motivate Keanu Reeves to like get on the bus at the right. So we keep like hypothesizing what could happen, what could happen. So even due to the risk of someone being absolutely cut in half by this elevator falling, she could not look away, which is saying something.
No, I mean, I think that's kind of the whole point of the movie. We decided for August because we did some blockbusters last year that we needed to do blockbusters, and like the fact that this movie had a tiny budget with Keanu was coming off of Point Break, but the studio didn't think he was bankable. Um, Sandra Bullock was still kind of pretty early in her career, and so for this thing, it had to be this type of movie that you can't look away from. I've seen this movie like 10 times. I haven't seen it in a while, but like I like thoroughly enjoyed the watch today. It didn't feel like an assignment for the purpose of this podcast. I was like, this movie's just fucking awesome. It's like
Yeah,
it's kind of like underrated in how good of a blockbuster it is. You know what I mean? Because there are like so many good ones from the 90s
that's
that this
true.
one sort of gets lost a little bit.
You say that, and yet I just remember like I feel like this movie is recommended a lot. I've seen it on Twitter, like circulating the film Twitter and recommendation for high impact, high octane action movies. And I feel like Speed is a name that gets thrown around quite a bit. Um, but yeah, it's good. So I mean, so let's move on, right? So they get the Medal of Valor. They get awarded the Medal of Valor, and Jeff Daniels has to now play the guy in the chair for the rest of the movie because Keanu Reeves shot him in the leg. Let me ask you something. Why, when they're at the bar with the rest of their team after the medal ceremony, why is everyone giving Jeff Daniels like, "Oh, you did it, you figured it out, you're the best, you're the smartest"? I'm like, fuck it. And then even Dennis Hopper for like the rest of the movie is like, Jack, you're so stupid. Maybe you can grow a brain while you're under that bus, or like, I'm smarter than you, Jack, or Jack, you're so dumb. Jack is the one who figures out the whole fucking thing in the beginning. He's the one who figures out that Dennis Hopper's still in the building. He's the one who basically saved um his partner. I forget Jeff Daniels' name, character name.
It's Harry, which is so confusing because Dumb and Dumber came out the same year, and he is also Harry in that. So like when I was taking my notes, I kept saying to myself Harry, but I was hearing Jim Carrey say it, and I was like, that's not his fucking name. And then I was like, oh shit, that is his fucking
It
name.
is his name. Yeah. So, he shoots Harry in the leg and he saves him, and he's the one who figures out that Dennis Hopper's in the elevator. So I don't understand why they underestimate him so much. Like, everyone underestimates him so much in this film. Is it the way he says man? Is it because he's like, come on, man? Come on, man?
Actually, the first one wasn't bad. The second one, not as great. I think it's because they're playing characters that are like, he's the hot young cowboy hotshot, and Jeff Daniels is the old guy brains, and like that's just like who they are in this. So I don't think it's any deeper than just like they're playing their characters, and like you're the dumb guy and you're the smart guy, and like that's the way it is.
Yeah, but do you agree with me that if it wasn't for Jack, the whole fucking elevator thing would have been gone awry?
Well, he's the one who decides we need to hook it up. He's the one who's like, this guy's gonna blow it no matter what. Like,
Exactly.
no, yeah, he does. I also think he just like is like, I'll let him and his partner love each other, right? Like they're really tight. So I think he's doesn't care that this dude is getting the credit because it's like they're bros. Like it just doesn't matter to him.
No, I know he doesn't care. That's never like a plot point, like a rivalry thing. That doesn't happen. But I'm just saying, from the perspective of the movie, you would think it would be the other way around. Or at least Jeff Daniels' character, Harry, would be like, hey, my bro did a lot of this work. But no, I mean, he's like, yeah, thanks, everyone. Thank you.
The other also got shot.
Yeah, I guess. And I guess that's why it makes a lot of sense. So Keanu Reeves has a buzz cut in this movie.
He does.
And the film, the studio actually was so upset that they were like, we're going to halt production until he can grow his hair back. And then the director was like, no, we're not doing that. And I think he looks really good with this cut. I think it really works for the character. And
I think it kind of just shows you how stupid studios are. They're like, we hired the guy from Point Break because that's like, we want the juice he has coming off of that movie. Right. And if they can't even recognize the dude from Point Break, and he was an FBI agent there, and now he's a cop, so like the hair plays. I think that was, but yeah, no, he looks good with short hair. He looks good with long hair. Like, fuck that guy. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
I think we can move on next to what's funny is like, so it cuts from the Penguin exploding himself to the awards ceremony, and it's then the next day after the awards ceremony that the bus explodes. And so the way the movie does it is like, it almost feels like the bus happens the day after the elevator, but no, like a couple weeks passed, maybe even a month or two until the awards ceremony. And then the day after the awards ceremony is when the bus happens.
Right. And no, I mean, I understood that, but I could also see how people...
Did you get it? You understood it?
Yeah, I get it. I like how that's set up too, and it's just weird that Keanu Reeves' character is just friends with this random bus driver. Um, but whatever.
Yeah, if you're friends with Keanu, like chances are something bad could happen to you, like in this movie.
So, I mean, the whole setup of how he gets on the bus, because you know it's coming, and I feel like even if you don't, even if you're back in 1994 watching this movie for the first time in theaters, you know the bus is coming. And then I think they're just setting up this bus driver being like, "Oh, is that the bus? Is that the bus he's going to get on?" And then it blows up. And then you're like, "Wait, okay, so that's not the bus." And then very quickly, let me ask you, how many times has a payphone ever like rang next to you and you're like, "Oh, that's for me?"
Well, it kind of shows you the level of detail he had to stalk Keanu's character for weeks to figure out that he was friends with this bus driver, that he got coffee at this place, and that like this would work this way.
Yeah.
So the level of detail is great. Although apparently, if you watch the bus exploding, you can see it being pulled by the car in front of it, which I didn't notice. I didn't notice when I was 9. I didn't notice now. And yeah, but I think like that setup is cool. But the phone call with Hopper and Keanu is really cool right afterwards, where he's like, tell me which bus. He's like, you think I'm going to tell you which bus? And he's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, haha, good boy. All right. And he's like, here are the rules.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because like,
I-
fuck it. Why do we have to beat around the bush if you figure this out? He's like, let's set up the movie right now. This is the rest of the movie.
Yeah, and I mean, it absolutely makes no sense on why they would hide the identity of which bus it would be. I mean, the whole crux of the thing is he wants him to get on the bus and to chase the bus. And I think getting on the bus is so great, right? Is like he finds it in the traffic and then he runs up on it and he's trying to get on. Did you know him hitting the glass and like the glass breaking was an accident, but they were just like, leave it. That's awesome.
I mean, it kind of feels that way, right? Like, because otherwise, you're just like, you'd have a director who's like, all right, we got to set up these little, like, this little explosive to like take out the glass when he hits it, or you're like telling your actor like, hey, hit this hard enough.
Yeah.
What I think is also interesting too is like the movie kind of it plays with the tension of like, oh, Sandra Bullock is missing the bus, and then but she flags it down and it stops for her because they all know her, and you're like, oh, how unlucky that you're like friends with all these people. And then we find out later that like she has tickets. It's the only reason she's on the bus. Cause like one of the other ladies is like, I hate driving. And Sandra Bullock is like, I love driving. I absolutely love it. I just really wish I wasn't here with you right now, Helen.
And then and so um it also plays with the suspense that you see the bus reaching 50 miles per hour but then like slowing down, and then once it goes above 50 miles an hour, and I was thinking, what is Jack's game plan at this point? The bus is obviously going over 50 miles an hour. He's gonna tell the driver there's a bomb on your bus and not expect the driver to immediately slam on the brakes.
What I think is interesting is like the machinations of this movie to get him on the bus, but it be above 50, right? Because if it never reaches 50, then the bus just kind of sits there.
Like if he could get to, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like Dennis Hopper's plan would fail immediately if he could have gotten to the bus before he got to 50.
Right. So the movie has to is like sort of written itself in a corner of like, what do we do? So he's driving up there. He almost gets on the bus, but now he's
Right.
not in his car. So then he commandeers a car with the guy
The
who can
guy
drive the car for him.
the guy that he commandeers the car from is amazing. I love his character.
Did you read the thing about how like he lost his license like 2 days before this, and so like he's driving this illegally? Like his whole job on this set is to drive this car, you know, to be in this car scene.
Okay, yeah. I did read something. I read also that Sandra Bullock had to get her bus license to be able to
Yeah, to do this.
operate the bus, and she passed it on her first attempt.
I'm sure that's a big thing she still tells people to this day. But yeah, so they
Sandra Bullock just goes around in her like
Oscar
hoity-toity
winner.
Oscar winner,
licensed bus driver.
licensed bus driver Sandra Bullock. Yeah.
But what I was saying is, so they then have to get him in this car with this guy so that he can jump over. And you're right, like he throw. What's funny too is so he writes the sign that like, hey, the bomb on the bus, so the guy starts to slow down. That sign like hits the window. All the people on the bus should be able to see that sign.
I think they do.
Well, no, because so then he jumps on the
Oh
bus.
shit! Yeah, you're right because he tells everyone eventually, and they're all shocked.
Yeah, the camera pans to every single person's face, like, huh? What? One thing we skipped before we like get back to this is I never noticed as a kid how like hard it was to watch Alan Ruck hitting on Sandra Bullock. And this time I was just like, oh, this is so gross, man. And then she's like, oh, I sat in gum. Do you want to touch my gum? Ugh. Like,
Apparently, I this is like the most fun facts we ever read about a movie ever. But
that's
apparently,
because you're not allowed to read fun facts anymore.
the gum thing was improv by Sandra Bullock because the director was like, "How are we going to get her out of this situation?" And Sandra Bullock's like, "I have this thing I do with the gum to get out of like awkward situations." And they were like, "Great, that sounds amazing."
Sandra Bullock's just gonna be cute, and that's what she's gonna do. It's like, ooh, gum. um, so now he is on the bus, and
This next part, man.
what I love too about this though is at the same time Jeff Daniels is finding out about this, and then his boss comes in and he's like, dude, the guy's back, where's Jack? And he's like, where do you fucking think Jack is? Like, he's already on this.
Yeah.
Which I just think is so funny. Like, it's not a funny movie, but the like his line delivery is great on that.
There's definitely some comedic parts. What part was one of the most frustrating things I've ever seen is the random fucking guy pulling out a gun on Keanu Reeves, and then Keanu Reeves pulls the gun on him, and he's like, "It's okay, man. It's okay. We're all cool here."
That's when
It's like-
the surfer came out, and you're just like, put it back, Keanu, like put it back. Well,
It's like-
you have to get once again. They have to get Sandra Bullock to drive the bus, and so like, how do you do that?
How do you do that? You shoot the bus driver. Yeah, exactly.
I think originally he was supposed to have a heart attack, and then I also did you. There's this. The original script had that the bus couldn't go above 20 miles per hour, which also just makes for a terrible movie because Keanu gets on the bus and he's like, "You're at 18. Hit the brakes," and then the bus just stops and they run off.
Yeah, at that point, the movie was just called Slow.
Yeah. So the bus driver gets shot, and he takes the gun away from the guy, and then he's just like, all right, we got to stay above 50. And all the all the people are like get mad at him, and he's just like Ruck says something to him, the other white guy says something to him, he's just like, what the fuck do you guys want me to do? Like, we're just doing what we're doing. Like, this is where we're at. And I think one guy's like, you expect us to believe we can't go below 50, and it's just like, just throw these guys off the bus.
But then the whole bus would blow up if that happens.
That's true.
What's funny now is like, okay, so he gets shot, and then Sandra Bullock has to drive the bus, and she's doing well so far. Like, the police are you. And what's so great about this movie, and what does keep the tension high, is that every time everything is going well, there's always something coming up that fucks everything up. And so like Sandra Bullock is driving the bus, she's keeping it above 50, everyone's following the rules, the police are on their way, they're like wary of the situation, they're trying to figure out how to handle it. And then you have like the traffic, right? I think the traffic is their first obstacle, and they're like, we have to get off the exit, but you can't go under 50. And so Sandra Bullock just fucking sideswiping like 30 cars down the exit. And then you have the children, and then you have the baby, which is not a baby in the carriage. They have all these things that are just like ridiculous, but like of course it happens in that moment to them.
Well, so that baby scene is probably one of like the most memorable scenes from this movie besides like the jump. Like that part of it. I like this time when it happened and she's like freaking out, and like I don't know if it's because
like crying.
Yeah, I like choked up when afterwards, and he's like, it's cans. Like I was like, it like that is like a very, it's kind of a little cheap to like, oh, we killed a baby. Just kidding. No, we didn't.
Yeah.
But you also get the laugh afterwards when the lady who's like has the cans is like cursing at them.
Though, like maybe it's a little bit of a ridiculous situation, but quite recently I've seen a homeless man pushing a baby carriage full of liquor bottles. So it's not so out there.
Would you say this is the point I was about to make? Would you say though that that lady looked a little too made up to be homeless?
Well, they really did in the sense that making the audience think there was a baby in there. I mean, she was talking to someone who didn't look homeless. She herself, in fact, did not look homeless. Like, they really fucking wanted you to think a baby was in there.
No, yeah, absolutely. The other thing that I think is really funny right before this part is he hands the phone to Ruck to relay as he looks under the bus and he's talking to Harry.
Yeah.
And Ruck is just like very calm and cool and deadpan. And then at one point, I think Keanu says, fuck. And he's like, oh no, something's up.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
thought the line delivery on that was great. So yeah, we're kind of now to the point where they need to get back on the 105. And they take that wide turn. And I like that she's like, we're going to tip over. He's like, no, we're not. And then he looks, he's like, we are going to tip over. Everyone get over. And, they do the fucking turn and it works. There's also another funny line from Ruck where he just goes to this old lady and is like, or older lady. I don't want to say old lady, but older lady. And is like, you can throw up if you want. It's fine.
It's fun. Okay, so I know you haven't seen Succession, but you always imagine Alan Ruck in these, and I don't know what he was like in Spin City. You said Spin City.
He was a bit of a lecherous man, very put out an air of self-confidence, but didn't. But underneath it was all a facade.
Oh, interesting. I always think of him as Cameron from Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? So him being this kind of this like cocky guy, being like, I guess it's closer to what you're used to seeing him in, but I always wondered why he was cast in the Connor role in Succession, because it plays the opposite of what he is as Cameron in Ferris Bueller. But watching this, I could see the link because here he's not as douchebaggy, but he's still a douchebag. So it's his progression through the years. It's just, I feel like he's getting like these kind of roles where he's like more and more of an asshole.
So this movie was originally written by Graham Yost. It was rewritten uncredited by Joss Whedon.
Right.
And originally Ruck's character was supposed to be just kind of an asshole. And then he gets killed in the end. He doesn't make it off the bus. And then Whedon rewrote it to where he's kind of a nice guy, sort of goofy, whatever. But he doesn't make it off the bus and he dies. And then when they filmed it, they're just like, no, pretty much everyone lives. Although a lot of people die, but not
a lot of people die.
Not as many that we
I'm glad
care about.
You know who I'm glad who died? Helen. I have no regret of Helen dying.
It's pretty fucked up, man. Pretty fucked up.
And I like the setup too of her death too, because you're on this like, you have these rules. No one is allowed to get off the bus, but the cops don't know that, right? So all the cops come up and they have this like perfect way to get everyone off the bus safely. And then Dennis Hopper calls and he's like, "Hey, Jack, I see that you're trying to get people off the bus. Have you forgotten our rule?" And Jack's like, "No, man." And he's like, "No, man." And he has to tell the chief of police, he's like, "Hey, we can't get anyone off the bus. I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous and that I'm fucking everything over, but we actually can't get these people off the bus." And so what I'm talking about the setup is that that's her name, right? Helen? I'm not misremembering. Yes, okay.
It is Helen.
Helen sees the doors open and she sees the opportunity to get off the bus. And you hear the SWAT team guys being like, "Come on, ma'am. Like, let me help you." I'm like, are they dumb? Did they just not hear that if one person gets off the bus, they'd blow the whole bus? Like, the SWAT team should be like, "Ma'am, stand back. Ma'am, go back to the thing." Right? And then, but also the setup where he looks under the bus at this point, right? He opens the hatch and he sees the bomb, and he sees that there's 3 different types of detonation, and you don't know why. And then when Helen tries to get off the bus and the doors explode, sending her like down and out, that's when you understand the different types of bombs. And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, it's also just like a kind of a nice like it like you think like, oh shit, because he hits a button, he's like, fuck you guys, why are you trying to do this? And it's a fake out that like really it makes Sandra Bullock think that they're dead. It makes you kind of think like, oh, they're about to die. And so I think it's a nice little bit. One of the things the director said was that like he wishes he had all the passengers try and get off, because he just thinks it would have been more realistic that they all would have been freaked out enough to try and like, if you jump real quick, it doesn't matter if the bus explodes. So it's kind of like every man, woman for themselves. But I don't know. I never really.
Well, I mean, what would happen? Keanu Reeves has to pull out his gun and like hold them all at gunpoint.
He's just like, guys, we can't do this. He's gonna blow it. He can see us because of the planes. The planes flying around is so smart too, because it like
helicopters. Yeah.
The reveal at the end with the camera is just so good. I also remember that being such a huge plot point, and it's like 3 minutes of the movie where we, as the audience, know about the camera, and he like works it for his like benefit. So it's just kind of funny, like how much of the movie I thought was like, oh, that camera, and it's like not.
And I love just the luckiness of the setup where they're like putting it on the loop, which I don't even know if that would have worked. Like, how did they broadcast it back to him on the loop? I guess, but
they said it was a channel that like it was that they could. I mean, they made it seem like they found it.
They made it seem like yeah, I know they made it seem. But what I was saying is that they're just lucky that when they switched it over, he was in the bathroom. He didn't notice the switch over.
Yeah, he'd been holding it for a while. He's an older guy. He's just like, had to make it happen. We are now at the freeway jump, and obviously the most iconic part of the movie. Apparently, not even in the original script, and the director just thought it would be cool. I had always just thought that like people like, oh, Mythbusters, this is impossible. Like this could have never happened. But apparently the reason it couldn't have happened is like when you're watching it this time as an adult, you're like, well, there's no ramp there. They're driving like in a straight.
Yeah, there's driving
like,
in a straight
incline, and it just fucking pops.
It fucking pops, and then it's not like the completed side of the highway is lower. It's on the same level, right? And apparently how they did this is like they took a bus, they put it up to 70 miles an hour, about a mile back, and they actually had to go off a ramp. What was funny though that I read is that it jumped so successfully that the cameras weren't set up to like properly shoot it in frame. So if you watch it, it literally goes so high it goes out of frame. And apparently upon landing, it like crashes into a couple other cameras that was supposed to get like different angles to it. But they were like, yeah, it's whatever. But that bus, I don't know if you know this, David. That bus jumped 190 feet.
I think it was 109.
Was it
190? Either way,
I think it's 190.
It doesn't matter. It's well over the 50 that it needed. So like, it's not. I mean, it just the fact is, and you can kind of tell there's a ramp because like the bus sort of juts up at a point, like when it goes. But it is just kind of funny that like I think for most of my life I was like, oh, this could never have happened, and then it's like, well, it did happen. It just needed that ramp. You know what I mean? So, and honestly, I don't give a shit whether or not it could have worked or not. You know what I mean?
No, it looked cool. It looked cool. I liked it.
That's like really like what you don't want that. No, it's awesome. It also it's like it's a total like.
I would only say that. I mean, nitpicking it, I would only say that it looks like the bus went up on a ramp when it didn't. But I mean, how else are you supposed to get that? And the fact that they didn't CGI it, the fact that they actually did it, I mean, kudos to them.
Well, I guess the director really hated CGI and really loved like trying to make it look as realistic as possible. He was, if he could use like miniatures, he would have done that instead. So
The title sequence, the opening title sequence,
it's
a, mi-
miniature.
a miniature. It was like 85 foot of elevator shaft built off of a model, and then like a dolly camera going down it, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, no, I mean it is. It was cool for 96. I don't know how cool I thought it was today.
Dude, but it's so long. And then the fact that like they revealed and disappeared the names dependent, like every time there was like scaffolding, and the fact that you could only do that with every other scaffolding makes it so long.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely too long. I love the next part of this movie is probably just as great as the rest of it. So they see the airport. He's like, make a fucking sharp turn. This bus apparently can never tip over. And
Right.
I love Alan Ruck. Like, we're going to the airport. I've already seen the airport. And then Ortiz is just like, wow.
Calling Ortiz Gigantor throughout the whole film just seems really fucking mean.
Well, I don't know if you were aware of this, but this was like in the research, but he's really fucking huge, so it just kind of made sense.
I guess. I mean, you don't really notice that on in the movie that he's like much larger than everyone else. Well, whatever. Did you know that instead of LAX, it was supposed to end in Dodger Stadium?
I did. Yeah, that's another fun fact you read, isn't it?
That's another fun fact I read. And then the director was like, "That's going to be boring. We have to do an airport. That'll be more exciting." Because
Well, and
it's the difference of driving around Dodger Stadium for an hour versus driving around LAX for an hour.
but it also LAX just solves a huge issue for you about how do you get the cameras not showing it anymore, right? Because you think that the cameras, the helicopters are what's like letting him see what you're doing, right? So
Oh yeah, and you can't have helicopters over LAX. Yeah. Mhm.
Dodger Stadiums probably can have helicopters. So this part is pretty interesting. It's I love at the end of it when fucking Sandra Bullock is just like, "Did you think things weren't like complicated enough? You had to make it tougher on yourself," because he fucking stabs the gas. But they get into the airport. They're just driving around, and we're just basically on Easy Street right now. And he's like, "I'm gonna get off," and they're like, "What the fuck? Like you're gonna leave us?" And and Gigantor is like, "I would." And then
Also,
a second
well,
later, he's like, he's off jerking off somewhere. And she's like, "Hey, get behind the yellow line. Like, what are you talking to me for?"
what's so funny too, it's like he looks back at them like in a "I'm coming back for you guys" sort of thing. But for me, he was just looking at Sandra Bullock, and then he gets off the bus, and I was like thinking, like he tells all his cop friends, he's like, "Get me the fuck out of here! Just, I'm done. Get me the hell out of here!" No, but he's like, later on, he goes up to like everyone who made it at the end of the movie, and they're like, "Wow, you came back for us!" And then he's like, "Yeah, you're lucky. One of you is so smoking hot."
I don't think he actually says that, but it's with his eyes.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, I don't even think he planned on coming back. I think it just
Well,
worked
he
out.
wanted to go under and diffuse it, and then be done with it, right?
Yeah, he was gonna go under, and then like, yeah, I mean, I don't know that the plan was to go back. And at the same time, Jeff Daniels in the wings has been figuring out, who is this person, and he gets it, and he drives over to this house, and for some reason, even with a fucking shot up leg, Jeff Daniels is like, "I'll be the one to go in there." And of course, that's a bad idea.
It's a trap.
And apparently they paid $5,000 to blow up that house and then had to rebuild it. So the guy
You know what's
just
crazy? The airplane that they blow up at the end of this movie only cost them $80,000.
that's interesting.
This I'm just saying, like this budget is so low. Like you couldn't make this movie for $35 million.
Nowadays. Well, nowadays you're just not making a movie because there's a strike. But so he gets off the bus, goes under it. machinations ensue, and then he actually ends up back on the bus, and now we are running out of gas.
How does the tire pop? Is it because they went over the fence for LA? Oh yeah, that's right. They went
Yeah,
over
over the
the
stairs.
opposite way in LAX. Yeah.
Yeah. So they go over the opposite way. So then he realizes the camera thing. They do like a 1 minute loop, and he's like, "It's only 1 minute." And he's like, "That's pretty much
All we
all we
have.
fucking have." So um they
He uses that to get them off without Dennis Hopper knowing.
and then we have him get off, and he slides all the way into the dirt with Sandra Bullock.
So I heard that Keanu Reeves did like most of his stunts. Um, and then I'm curious if Sandra Bullock did that stunt with him. I would think not, but maybe. But I have to say that is badass. Like hooking up the thing, sliding out with her. It's so fucking cool. And then the bus like going through the hangar keeps going and crashes into that courier. And I like how it like obviously it has courier on the side, so we know that like no one died during that crash. We even see the guy towing the plane like get out after the explosion, just to hone in on the fact that no one died,
I thought
except Helen.
yeah. I read somewhere that in order to have like even when you're taxing a plane, at least one person has to be on it. So like at least one person would have died in real life on that plane anyway. Um, which would put the body count, I guess, at like 14. I think the way the bus kind of goes through the hangar too.
Why 14?
I'm not going to count it for you. They said 14 people died.
I'm just trying to. Helen died. He saved the rest of the people. No one died in the elevator.
Jeff Daniels died. Other cops may have died.
Oh, maybe like other cops within the
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 entire
house.
fucking house exploded.
Yeah.
But the bus going through the hangar, the way it hits the plane, like all that is like really cool. And then you're like, oh wait, we have 20 minutes left in this movie. And the thing that I noticed this time for the first time is like, why the fuck are you taking Sandra Bullock
Yeah.
near?
That makes no sense.
It's so stupid.
It's so dumb. And I was so mad at the film because I noticed there was 20 minutes left, and I noticed that they were going over to the thing, and I noticed Sandra Bullock was in there, and also the fact that they didn't kiss yet. I was like, there's another. There's just gonna fuck it up. They're gonna fuck it up, and they're gonna put Sandra Bullock, sweetheart, in danger, and I'm not happy about it.
There's a couple good lines too from the captain where he's like, I might be a nice guy and let you have the rest of the day off. And then he's like, hey, this guy wants his money. He's like, I'll tell him where to get his fucking money. And then he's like, hey, he doesn't know. But then they set up this money.
Oh, yeah.
Fucking Hopper notices that the thing's gone, that the plane exploded. He's like, no. And
Oh
then
yeah, because the loop, he notices
purse.
the purse, yeah.
Fucking lady. But then they're sitting there and like, yeah, we've got it. We've got it marked. He can't.
Oh, he
get it.
notices the snipers. Yeah.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about Keanu's in there. He's like, this isn't right. And they're like, dude, we have him locked down. Like, he can't get this money. He's like, dude, watch the bag. He's like, why would we watch the bag? And it's like, wait, why were you not watching it? It's like, what were we doing here? Oh, we just had to flick this button. And he's like, yeah, it's
gone.
It's gone.
Yeah.
And then he climbs down there and he's like, freeze, motherfucker. Like, hot shot. Tell me this. Turn around. And you can see it's the outline of Sandra Bullock.
Hold on. I just want to say real quick a couple of things. There's a creepy mannequin in the back of Dennis Hopper's place this entire time wearing a uniform. And the fact that he comes down wearing that uniform to like trick Sandra Bullock into coming with him, I thought was great. But the part of this movie that I literally dropped my jaw and I was like, oh shit, was when Keanu Reeves takes off the trash and reveals the hole blown into the sewer system. I was shook, David. I was like, that is so fucking smart. Because how else is he gonna get his money?
Yeah. No, it is. And he just immediately like knows it too. When Keanu looks down there, he's like, ah, shit. Um, and then we end up on a subway. So we have been on an elevator
Mm-hmm.
and a bus,
In a
and
car.
now, oh yeah, and now a subway. And somehow Keanu gets on. I love the way instead of like climbing on the back, so he has like plenty of times to like break the window or shoot it out or whatever. He gets on the side so that he has to open these doors, or he's gonna get fucking clattered into the side of the wall like railing. He gets in, and then but then immediately decides, oh no, I'll just get on
Climb the
top
roof.
of it,
Yeah.
and then I'll have this light almost hit me. That'll come up later.
there's a man. Okay, hold on. Before we get to that, there's this part where Dennis Hopper just fucking shoots the railman, the train conductor, and so it forces the train. And so then they're like, "Hey, the train." The rest of the SWAT team patches into the train radio, and they're like, "Hey, the train is headed to a non-finish part of the rail." And it's almost like again, like can't they fucking figure out how to like finish a fucking highway, finish a fucking rail system?
Not in LA.
Here's what I don't understand. When they look at the map, they're heading to the end of the line, and doesn't it seem redundant to you that they're heading to some place that's not finished, versus why didn't they just say, hey, you're heading to the end of the line?
What's the end of the line because it's not finished?
No, but I understand that, but what I'm saying is that in train stations and subways, there are end of the lines. There's just it is finished. It's just the end of the line, and then it backs up, right?
Okay.
So instead of being repetitive and being like, oh, another thing is unfinished, I wonder why they decided to go that way and not just like, hey, you're at the end of the line.
I mean, I don't know, so that he could go through a curve instead and like,
Like to have like the
go off the
construction
tracks. Yeah, I don't know.
the construction workers there. I don't know.
Well, why don't
Yeah.
you rewrite the script, buddy? I don't know what to tell you.
I will rewrite the script. So it's a plethora of things that happen in this moment, right? Like Dennis Hopper handcuffs her to the pole of the train, and then the conductor dies, and they're going way too fast. I love this part where it's like she puts the bomb jacket on her, and then he has her hold the dead man switch, and I was just thinking like he's showing her how to use it, and I really thought she was gonna like grab his hand as Keanu Reeves shot him, and like they would both work to figuring how to stop him, but that's not how it went at all. Like I didn't feel like the setup was there.
Well, I felt like, yeah, once she had a hold of it, I think the movie's trying to do that, right? Like, oh, she has a hold of it. So now Hopper can get shot and she'll just have it. But,
But Keanu Reeves is on the fucking roof, so
well, and they wanted to sort of trick you. But then also you realize afterwards that once like that one of them is holding the kill switch, they can just pull the plug at the back of the vest and it won't work anymore. But Keanu's on top. Hopper's like, hey, can I bribe you? And then pulls out his money and realizes there's a die pack, because of course there is. And then just starts shooting. And then fucking Dennis Hopper over here is like, let me climb on top of this somehow. They don't show you how it's done because I doubt he actually could.
he sneaks up on him.
Sneaks up on him, starts beating him with the dead man switch, and is like, don't touch it. And then he's like, I'm smarter than you, but I'm taller, and like push him up, which I don't understand what I'm taller means.
I didn't make sense to me either.
That's what Keanu came up with. And then apparently the head that they were going to use was so like lifelike and realistic that it was too disgusting, so they just showed it from the back. And then he gets down and she's like, what happened? Oh, he lost his head.
Yeah, in the most like lighthearted situation you could ever believe possible. Let's make a joke in this moment.
And so then they apparently the switch to turn off to stop the train, like the emergency brake has been hit. Apparently there's no dead man switch to stop the train. So they're just going to run through and
Wait. First they come up with the brilliant idea that, oh, we have to jump the rail, and the only way we can jump the rail is if we just go faster.
That's not first. That's after they realize they can't break it, which is what I was about to say.
No, but
And-
I mean, but where's the logic in that? I'm like, you're gonna jump the rail and you're gonna go faster.
I know. I was pointing out that you interrupted me so that you could say it.
Oh, I know, but I wanted
Okay,
to
I
say
just
it.
wanted
I'm
the audience to
aware. No,
see.
no, no. They know too.
So instead of hitting the end of the line, and she's like, "Keanu, you can leave," and he's like, "No, we're just gonna go faster." And so fucking run, like he pushes it as fast as it can go, and then just holds her tightly, and they just gingerly, the train pops up onto the pavement in front of like the Chinese theater and like tips over so she's on top of him. And now I was thinking in this moment, she pretty much has to sleep with him, because of the
Oh,
implication.
right.
And
He saved her life. Yeah.
and then he's like, "Oh, I don't know. Relationships built on like traumatic events don't do really well." And she was like, "All right, well, ours will just be built on sex." I was like, "Oh my god!" Like, has anyone been more attractive in this moment than Sandra Bullock? And I don't think the answer is. I don't like.
Probably not. Probably not. Although I love to think that the people who are just like walking by on the Walk of Fame sees this train, this subway car pop up from the fucking hellscape and land on the streets of LA, go by it and like fucking giggle at them making out. I just want one guy to be like, Is that Keanu Reeves? Sandra Bullock?
Yeah, I mean, I also had the thought that like I would just like we're not even waiting for the LAPD. We're just catching a cab back to one of our places, like right then and there, or just like in the middle of the subway, in the middle of the street. Like who knows?
I think that's what they did. So like Matrix came out 5 years after this, and the projection of Keanu Reeves's career is kind of wild, though, right? Like he was in a bunch of like little things. I guess Point Break, you would say, was his big break, and then he did this movie, which he was still barely, not really like anyone's first choice for this role, and then
I think it was the directors, but yeah,
The Matrix.
which Will Smith was supposed to take.
God, that would have been
Crazy.
that that would have been a totally different movie.
Will Smith, like, obviously has had an amazing career, and he had that run of like $100 million movies, like years and years in a row. But like, just some huge movies that he just decided not to do. The Matrix and then Django. Would have
He
been
decided
crazy.
not to do it.
Yeah, he passed on both those.
Well, okay, so I mean, but Keanu Reeves was always known as Bill and Ted before he kind of did this escalation of his career. I was looking up what he did between Matrix and Speed, and right off the bat, the only thing I could find is Devil's Advocate.
Where he does just a horrible accent. So one final thing before we end, I found this really cool thing that Harry was originally supposed to be played by Ed Harris, and in that version, he was going to be the bad guy.
Really? Oh, that's
Yeah,
kind
it
of
was
cool.
going to be a trick, like your partner this whole time has been,
I
has
kind of
been
like
Obama.
that. I kind of like that, honestly.
Well, I'm not going to spoil this movie, but apparently that was used in a different movie by the same writer. So maybe I'll tell you that after, and you can go watch that movie because you don't care about movies being spoiled for you. So
I might have even seen it. Who knows? But I will say that during this time, the success of White Men Can't Jump was so great that they thought about casting Wesley Snipes and Woody Harrelson as Harry and Jack.
I can't shake my head hard enough at you just sneaking a fun fact at the end of this fucking podcast.
One last fun fact.
This movie's awesome. I think it's a little underrated at this point, and it's fucking awesome.
I mean, I agree. I would suggest whoever has not seen Speed, whoever has been thinking of seeing Speed but then holding off, like me, don't. Just watch it. It's on Hulu. It's on Tubi. Just go watch it and enjoy. It's fucking fantastic.
Well, thanks for listening to another episode of I Finally Watched. This is David.
And this is Alon, and I finally watched Speed.